Welcome to Accounting High.
I was watching a show and somebody called a therapist a mindset architect, I think.
Ooh.
So I was like, oh, like an accounting architect. That sounds pretty cool. Everybody's seen these articles in the Wall Street Journal saying there's no accountants out there. I really view this as the biggest opportunity. There's an unlimited amount of clients out there. Like, we're not in competition with each other, and we're changing our practices together. It makes it better for everybody.
Welcome back, Accounting High. Now it's time for social studies. We'll teach you new creative ways to market old product. If you watch how they post, you'll see it's all authentic and genuine. Grow a following and don't get held back by perfection. Be intentional online, create content. Now that's hot. Strategy is key with social media and pods. Start slow, pick a platform, stick to it and go post. Make a plan to engage with client watering holes. Create a focused brand, be a lead online. It's a digital world with the best ROI. Now create your own ideal client persona. Let's go. Keyword Accounting High and get ready to blow. It's time for social studies, accounting content hub, LinkedIn marketing or X. So come join our social club. Is it Twitter? Is it X? Shit, now I can't keep up. So comment, follow, love if you're into social studies.
Introducing the star of our show,
Miss Kelly Rohrs and Scotty.
We're gonna have a problem here.
Class is in session. Kelly, thank you for joining me at Accounting High.
Thank you for having me.
I've had half of your podcast on already. Now this is time for the other half. This is time for the millions part. We went from zero to millions, and it's pronounced roar as in the Katy Perry song, right?
Roar like a lion. Yep.
Roar like a lion. Kelly, you're calling in from New York today. Is that right?
That's
what part
correct.
of New York?
I live on Long Island.
On Long Island. Tell me, how did you end up with your CPA? How did you get into accounting?
That is a good question. So it was not a straight line for me. I did not go to school in 4 years and, study real hard with no job to get a CPA license. I was always a lover of numbers. So I actually wanted to be a math teacher. I got into Hofstra with a full scholarship for math.
How do you get a full math scholarship at college? That's amazing.
For math education. But, it was just always a passion of mine. I was a senior in high school and I loved calculus. I love to go figure things out. Not that many people, I feel say, I love calculus.
I liked calculus. That was actually a great class. AP Calc, I think the junior year.
Right? I just loved being able to, find the solution to a problem. You work so hard through these things and, it wasn't always easy. It needed help. I sat in the resource room with my teachers or other kids all the time. And, it was just there was such satisfaction in solving a problem. And I also...
Were you a math tutor in high school too?
I was a math tutor in high school. Yeah.
Oh,
I
all
have
right.
entrepreneurial blood, I always like to say, because I've always been hustling. From when I was little, I used to pass out babysitting flyers around the houses, around my area when I was 11 years old.
We were crossing paths. I'm handing out lawn mowing flyers. You're handing out babysitting flyers. We got everything covered. This is your kindred spirit here. All right, keep going. I want to hear more.
In middle school, I took old jeans and I made them into handbags and I sold them to the kids at school.
Oh,
so I always wanted to make money. I always coming up with new ways to do things. So I was babysitting, I was tutoring. Tutoring was great money for me when I was in high school. It was I just sit down with this kid and do his homework for an hour for $30. I mean, who makes $30 an hour when they're, 17 years old? So, it was always a part of me. And my father passed away when I was 10 years old. He was the same way, hustling, painting, bagel store, this, that, anything he could do to make money. And he eventually owned his own business and was a numbers guy too. He actually traded sugar, coffee, and cocoa at the World Trade Center. And he passed away a year before 9/11, but I feel I always need to clarify that. But
that's exactly where I went.
I went to school and a year in, I was not dealing with life. So I ended up dropping out dealing with personal issues, like hanging out with the wrong crowd, having mental health issues. And so I took some time off. I took a couple years off. I was working at this deli, and this guy comes in, and I was joking around with him because I ended up reapplying back to Hofstra. I was actually accepted to go into an actuarial math program.
What's actuarial math?
That's like all those number crunchers and those like TPAs that do all those pension numbers and all like the back office stuff. It's actually like less boring than accounting, if you could, imagine.
Less boring or more boring?
More boring. More boring. More boring.
Us, yeah.
So, this guy comes in and I'm joking around with him. I always had the personality to like interact with customers. And I'm like, oh, like you're going to have to hire me one day, because he was a CPA. He owned an accounting firm like locally. And he was like, oh, really? Like, why don't you give me a call? And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. No, like, here's my information. And I was like, okay, like my boss is literally standing right behind me. Like, I'm not doing this right now. He called me after he left, called the store and said, I want you to come in. And I actually had an interview with him the next day. And that was pretty much it, because after that, I started working in accounting, and I was like, you know what? I can go back to school for accounting. I love this. I get to deal with other people's businesses. I get to help people. I get to still work with numbers. And like, I just felt that there was unlimited potential there. So I ended up working for this guy full time. I went to school full time, studied full time. Like, as soon as I was done with my 150 credits, I studied for the CPA exam while I was working full time through tax season. I got my license. I stayed at this firm for 10 years, pretty much like, a typical story in public accounting, like dangling this carrot of like, oh yeah, this is going to be yours. Like, you're such a hustler and all these clients are going to be yours one day, and kind of had the carpet pulled from under me from bad business. One day, where I'm going to sell this, I'm going to sell the practice to this other guy who's not licensed. So you can't buy it. And then it was like, I've never really gone into detail with this on a public platform before. So this is definitely exclusive, and I don't want to, shame anybody, but like there was a lot of shady closed door conversations going on with each of us. There was an older gentleman like, well, I'm going to sell the practice to you. You're like a daughter to me. And he was also doing the same thing to the other gentleman that was working there. Oh, you're like a son to me. I would never do this to you. And at the end of the day, they ended up signing some papers behind my back, even though we shook on me owning the practice. So it was just very, very dirty. And I ended up staying there for maybe another year and a half after that. And like over my time there, like I contemplated leaving. I had done interviews, but I felt like I had something good going there. I was like running the show and took over. I was managing most of the work while the other people were going out there and doing the sales. And I had made like leaps and bounds of changes in terms of technology and systems. So it was comfortable for me too.
So like most accountants, accounting firms, there's a lack of clear communication around the succession plans, especially a firm that does a lot of taxes and things get really busy and everybody's too busy to actually talk about the future, what that holds. You're a hustler. You're an entrepreneur. So what happened next?
So you really hit the nail on the head. It was always like, oh, well, next month, like we'll just go out and have monthly meetings and updates, and we'll come up with the plan, and we'll do this and we'll do that, and it never came to fruition. So I had been building my brand through LinkedIn for a couple of years at that point.
Quickly approaching 10,000 followers on LinkedIn. That is a brand right there. That's dope.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. I will be celebrating that 10,000
this year for sure.
So I had been setting things up in place. Like I had formed my own professional corporation through the state of New York, because it is kind of a lengthy process here. Unfortunately, New York's still one of the, hardest states to establish things in. So if you form a CPA practice, it takes 3 to 4 months to do. So I said, let me set this up, because maybe I'll buy a practice and I'll bring it into where I am now. Or, maybe I'll go out on my own. I'm not sure. So I did that. I had already been in contact with, do you know Katie Thomas?
I do know Katie Thomas. She's
So-
been on this show before.
She's one of my best friends.
She's our social studies resident here. Yeah.
I actually met her through LinkedIn, probably like 2018, 2019. We've never met in person.
Oh, really?
I had a baby. She had a baby. I had another baby. So it's like been like one thing after another. We haven't been able to cross paths yet, but I have to say she's like one of my best friends. So anyway, I had her start building out a website for me. And I kind of knew I'm going to take the leap. I started putting things in place. I took out a home equity line of credit on my house. So I was like, I need a little bit of backup here. I want to make sure I got enough money. You know, I'm an accountant, so I'm like fairly conservative, like making this decision to go out on my own. I had a 9-month-old child. And I said, you know what? I have like 6 months worth of savings. If I don't make this happen, then like the worst case scenario, I'll go work another W-2 job. I mean, let's face it, like, if you can find a good accountant, like they're worth it, right? So like,
Yeah.
I'll just go work for something. But I knew I could get 1099 work. I had a lot of, options for me. And I quit my job June of 2021. And best decision of my life, best decision ever. It feels like so much longer that I've been on my own, but I left with like $25,000 of my own business. A couple clients followed me. And, I have to say, I just closed 2023 and I'm at over $500,000 of billing in like just under 2.5 years, or just over 2.5 years. So
what would you say role COVID played in any of this? Did it play any role?
that's a good question. It certainly played some kind of role because I started working from home like everybody else did. Right. And when I went back I had my son in September of 2020, kind of like still the height of the pandemic. They wanted me back in the office immediately. Not immediately, but in January. I never really took too much time off. I took 2 weeks off, and then I worked like 2 days a week or 2 or 3 days a week after that from home.
Was there any kind of policy on maternity?
No. And they were definitely like not wanting me to take the full amount of time. I don't think I ever did. I don't think I took 3 months of time, over like the intermittent time that I was taking it.
How many people were at this practice?
Maybe about 7.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was probably the first person to ever have a baby on the job. So they wanted me full time back in the office. I had to fight to stay home 2 days a week just to work from home, because for me, like, I was much more productive.
You had to fight for a
pandemic.
hybrid environment because they were trying to go fully back to the office.
Yeah. And not only, was it, I really get distracted. I was very distracted by people coming in. There was no workflow, like questions, people getting aggravated during the day. Like, I am the type of person that is super productive at my desk at home. Like, we know that some people, the work from home environment doesn't work for them. But for me, I was blasting through work.
I think it all depends on the owner and their mindset around what they can do. If the owner separates themselves from that, then you can truly have a harmonious environment where people can come and go or all that. But if the owner says everybody has to come in, then everybody has to come in. This led you to the path of, I have a kid, I'm a mom now, I have to leave my house, then I have to find childcare, and you can't do both harmoniously.
Exactly. So I knew that I could change a lot of things. So I said, I'm going to do this. And I took this leap of faith. And I don't want to say I fully have the work-life balance thing going on, because, there's definitely ebbs and flows.
Yeah, you keep yourself busy too. You have a lot. I was going to read through just introducing you, all the things that you've done and everywhere you've
You're right. I put a lot on my own plate. It's actually something that you said on your interview with Blake Oliver. Like, you did your thing with your firm, right? And now it's like you're working just as much on other things because that's just who you are. It's like I like to fill my plate. And, between the podcast, or I served as the vice president of the National Conference of CPA practitioners for my local chapter for almost 2 years. And I had another baby 8 months ago. So, I like to keep myself busy, but I do like to tell people I have much more like harmony in my life in terms of spending time with my kids. Like I drop them off at the babysitter at 7:45 and we pick them up at 2:45. So I'm generally working from like 8 to 3, and then I get to spend the afternoon with my kids, make dinner, have some sort of balance, and then if I want to hop on the computer after they go back to sleep, I can.
Balance is overrated.
Yeah, I don't like to even use that
need
word.
Balance. Yeah, it's not a great word. It's a word that's forced upon us. We feel like we need that. I say the word harmony a lot because you can make it harmonious or it can be disharmonious too, depending on your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So you've taken on a lot. You've grown a practice over $500,000. Meanwhile, you're actively doing other things. I took notice of you on LinkedIn. I saw you posting. You have your show, but then you're also posting stuff for your firm and tips for business owners. Tell me about the content strategy. Do you have that being managed by Katie and her team?
Great question. So I think it was February of 22, my first real tax season, where I was doing the content. I wasn't as consistent as I would have liked to be because we all know it's hard to do it yourself. It takes a lot of planning to get good content out there. So I said, you know what, Katie, I think it's time for me to try this out. And so, she posts on my behalf 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I give her all of the content. We have like a crazy hour-long call where I basically spit out and talk the whole time about all my ideas that I write down, after I get out of the shower, because that's when I get most of
That's
my...
the best time for ideas, sensory deprivation.
Yeah, that's when I get most of my ideas. So, it all comes from my heart. And do I have like a specific strategy? Not really. Like, I'm not like, oh, this month I want to talk about, X, Y, Z, or we need 5 posts that have to do with taxes and 6 for accounting. Like, it's not really like that. It's really about what goes on in my life that inspires the posts that come about.
As it should be. That's great. Is this resonating with any clients, any future clients? Have you gotten any business out of it, or right now is it just fulfilling?
So that's a good question also. I have to be honest. I don't think I would have my practice where it's at if I didn't have LinkedIn. I attribute probably 75% of my business to the connections that I've made on LinkedIn. It's not necessarily, me gaining direct clients from there, but more of referral sources. So I have other CPAs that refer me business. I have other financial advisors or attorneys or networkers that I've met through there who have then sent me a ton of business. Now, do I also get clients from LinkedIn? Yes, but it's much more few and far between than the connections that I've made with other professionals on there.
So it's the community you've cultivated around the CPA, around the profession, that has led to clients too. So you're leveraging LinkedIn for the community, and you've positioned yourself in the right place in that community as the expert. So if clients do happen to come, but it's not direct client acquisition that you're looking for. You're looking to continue to cultivate that.
Yeah. I'm not one of those people who are like directly messaging people my calendar, 50 times a day, or saying like, come and work with me all the time. I think this indirect way of gaining business has been much more fruitful because people will come to me and say, I've been following you for years. I have a client for you. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know you were following me because you never even liked anything or you never even commented. Yeah, so
that happens. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's really amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Now let's kind of talk about your building that practice. What's some of your goals for the practice right now? And tell me the makeup of your team, size, and everything. You kind of hinted at the size.
Mm-hmm. So I have 2 other CPAs working for me as contractors. And one is basically full-time. The other one, she gives me like 10 to 15 hours a week. And then I have a full-time bookkeeper and admin. I had also just hired a VA and another CPA, but I had to fire them. So quick to fire.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, slow to hire, quick to fire. So right now we are 5. Yeah, 5. And my goals last year were definitely more in terms of revenue. I think that this year it's definitely more on increasing our efficiency, being a little bit more organized, I still have some old habits from the firm that I used to work for. You know, old habits die hard. So
Give me some examples of one of these old habits.
you know, like organizational things. One of the CPAs I hired, she is really kicking my butt and saying like, listen, we can't put this into 5 different formats in your folders. You need to have a system here. And I'm like, well, I never was like held, you know, to the fire to have a system in the
weren't
past.
held
So like
accountable
I
there.
wasn't held
Yeah.
accountable for this. I was the one who was kind of creating these things. And for the most part, if I was the only one who was looking at it, like it didn't need to be done. So I'm definitely working on more systems and processes moving forward. It's not in terms of revenue this year. I had a very busy November and December. I was working a lot of nights, and I don't want to be in that position next year. So I definitely want to work, you know, between 25 and 30 hours a week. I want to be able to spend time with my kids. Being a planner, right, and being an accountant, I was like, oh, let me try for a baby in May, because by the time I reach next tax season, they'll be sleeping through the night, and, you know. What a stupid thought that was, because my
You've
daughter.
got two. You don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
You have a daughter and a son,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And my daughter is not sleeping through the night yet. So shame on
Not
me.
yet.
Fool. I'm the fool here.
Oh, well.
yeah.
As you learn with these bumps along the way, they're not necessarily bumps, but you know, you want to have something sustainable, something that can work without you. And you're realizing now that it's not going to work without you if you don't have a system in place.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a file structure, if you don't have the right practice management, what tool are you using for practice management?
So we're using TaxDome for the tax returns. We're using Excel, and we're using Microsoft To Do.
Okay.
So it's like a little bit of everything. I would like to move more into TaxDome, but again, like if it was me being the primary person, I had to fire somebody last tax season in the middle of tax season too. So it was like I'm the one who's got most of it in my head.
You did this before tax season this time, though. You didn't even wait to get into tax season.
No, I didn't.
Now, your client composition, are all of your clients virtual?
Yeah.
Do any of them still come to see you?
No, I don't have in-person meetings. I don't meet people at the house. I work from home. I don't have an office. Do I have people who send me things, or sometimes people drop stuff off? I have a few of those.
That's what I was kind of looking for. If you still have physical drop-offs.
One person dropped something off today.
Old habits die hard.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? For certain people, I'll make it work, but I'd say 95% of the firm is virtual. Clients from here to California.
Now let's talk about creating content for accountants. When did you have the idea to have a podcast? Because I heard Bilal said it was your idea.
He said that?
I'm pretty sure.
Going back into my personality and the way that I've always been from my high school days, I always felt, that I wanted to be the leader of things, or I wanted to change things. I was always an outspoken person, which sometimes wasn't taken very well. If you were a leader, that's natural. And
Give me the first time where you thought something wasn't taken very well.
Probably in like one of my classes, and just kind of talking, back to the teacher and trying to put them in their place.
Yeah.
And correcting people for, just right ethics.
So you have a strong personality, strong opinions.
Yeah.
For certain things too.
I have a very, very strong personality, which I think is needed when you're running a business.
And when you don't hear many voices like yours out there to help guide you, then you've got to be one of those voices. Is that like a logical conclusion that you draw to that most of us tend to find? There wasn't any guiding light out there. So I thought maybe I could provide that. And it sounds like that's what you and Bilal are doing too. You guys are doing things differently in a sea of people that are attached to this old way.
100%. If you're going to, the local accounting groups, like the State Society or the group that I was a part of, it's like I was one of the only females in the room. I was one of the only young people don't go to these things. I mean, you have to, basically the requirement is to be 55 and up. I think what kind of started clicking for me, I went to the accounting and finance show in New York City, probably back in 2019. And I was like, I came back with so much information. I was like, look at how people are doing things. Like, there's a whole nother world out there, and we're not doing any of this. I mean, when I went to this firm, they still literally had the paper where you write out the journal entries. They were still doing that. They weren't using QuickBooks Online. Like, they were writing out journal entries.
Yeah.
On paper. That's so ridiculous. But you know what? It's not ridiculous to a lot of people. And a lot of these firms are doing things the way that they've been doing them since 1995. And that's not working. It's not sustainable. Who the hell wants to buy that kind of practice?
They are still making money. And if you're still making money, you still have clients and you still have a business that's functioning, you're not seeing the enterprise value of this business moving forward. Because you're right. Nobody's going to buy that. Nobody's going to buy a half-broken practice.
Exactly. And
or they'll buy it for half the dollar. Pennies on the dollar.
I spent hours and weeks and months trying to improve these organizations and bringing new ideas to some of this older generation and trying to get these next-gen groups started. And I was met with a lot of resistance. So much so that I was like, this is exhausting. I am spending so much of my time and I'm not getting paid to do this. Like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, you think it's a deeper rooted problem of trying to get the approval of somebody that you know you're not going to get it from.
Yeah, maybe.
I've dealt with this. And I'm part of a franchise that has a whole 90% of their people don't want to change, don't want to do anything differently. They just want to keep things the same old way. And then now you have leadership at the top that's trying to get people to change. At first, it was everybody pointing the finger at me doing differently. So I've experienced that. It's hard. And at a certain point, you have to let that go and realize that's not for you. That's not your audience. Those are the people that you're not going to be able to help. What about this next generation and the younger people that are the ones at those firms, those employees at those firms? Those are the people that you're talking to, I think.
Yeah, and that's really what shifted for me in the last year. Like a year ago, I said, you know what, I'm done wasting my time talking to people who don't want to change. So it's time to really switch gears and support the people that want to hear it.
Yeah. And you created that around your community that you cultivated and you dug up through your own efforts. You know it's resonating with people out there because you see that. Mm-hmm. And you know because you're doing it too at your practice. You can walk the talk.
It's really amazing. I've had several people reach out to me after I started my practice who were like, I don't know what to do. I want to leave too. I need to do XYZ. And I said, well, this is what I did. This is what I used. This is what I'm billing. This is, XYZ. And they did it. And they were more successful than they thought they were. It just makes me so excited that there's more than probably 2 handfuls of people that have done it and said, you're the reason why I did this. And I couldn't have done it without you. And that to me is worth everything at the end of the day.
That sounds like impact. That sounds like the definition of impact. And we've been trying to define that on this show. But when you can help people and change their lives, that's how you get your biggest sense of purpose and fulfillment. So it sounds like your mastermind groups are just virtual offspring of what you were experiencing in real life. And now you're recreating it with people that are receptive.
Yes. Yeah. So I started the mastermind right before I had my daughter. I said, you know what, I'm going to launch this thing because so many people are reaching out to me. Let's just make this a virtual meeting of the minds. And I have a list of maybe 60 to 100 accountants. We usually get about 15 to 20 on our monthly calls. And I do anticipate developing it into something else. For now, it's a free, virtual meeting that we run at the end of every month, and we come together. We talk about our problems. We talk about our wins. We talk about software. We talk about, there's people on there who've been in practice for 25 years. There's people on there who, are looking to leave their practice or are fresh into it. So it's really diverse. And then I think Bilal approached me maybe over the summer, and he said, do you want to do a podcast? before I quit my job, I had spoken to him on LinkedIn. So I guess that was like, we had known each other for a bit in 2021. He tried to hire me. And I'm like, no, but I think I can do it myself. Like, I know you're friends with Chase Berkey too. I met with Dark Horse. Like, I met with a bunch of people around the country. And I'm like, you know what? I have all of these like backups, but I think I can do it myself. So, you know, Bilal and I have bounced ideas off of each other for a while. We've known each other forever. And I said, you know what? I would love to do a podcast. So again, we got Katie together. She's producing the podcast for us. She, you know, waved her magic wand over everything. And, you know, here we are. We're almost 20 episodes in already, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And we're getting like 60 to 75 listens per episode for podcasts. I think that's like pretty high up.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. And Katie is kind of like the magic confidence creator in anything that confidence for content creators is what Katie should be. Because it's like she sprinkles that little magic dust to get you guys in the right mindset to be able to do this. Because that's hard too, is to just put yourself out there and to let people hear you unfiltered. But all it is a search for knowledge and seeking to learn more. And every time you have a guest on, you always have to remember that too, is you have something to learn from this guest. And there's things that they say that you can apply to your practice, but you still have a practice. You still have a firm that's generating income, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we need to monetize this in some way, because as I love giving everybody advice, I love running everything, but like, it's not cheap to run this kind of stuff.
Well, you're paying Katie.
Yeah.
And you've got your time associated with the content creation and everything else. Now it's time to start cashing in on some of this, and you get the hustler in you is the one who's doing the talking.
Ding! Some like light bulb went off. Like, you know what? There's something else we can develop this into. So we'll see.
So share with our students then, what are some of your potential thoughts on what that could look like?
So talking about the industry as a whole, everybody's seen these articles that have come out over the last couple of months in the Wall Street Journal saying there's no accountants out there and accounting doesn't have any meaning. And, you know, you better expect your tax return fees to go up because there's a lack of preparers out there. And, you know, we can all see this as a terrible thing because we can't find staff, and we can't do this and we can't do that. But I really view this as the biggest opportunity that anybody who has the drive to start their own firm or, you know, persevere in this industry, like, there is unlimited potential, because you and I both know, like, what the criteria is of most accountants in the field right now. It's like over 55, bald white guys. Okay, they're going to be retiring. I mean, how many people are coming to me saying, like, my accountant died, you know, they were 90 years old and been using this guy that my parents have used for so long, I finally need a new accountant. That's not going to change anytime soon. So besides the criteria of what's going on, like the whole work-life balance thing and coming into 2024 and realizing that things can be done differently, like, I want people to know that they can run their practice differently. And whether it's for current firm owners or people who want to create their own firm, you don't need to work 65, 85 hours during tax season. It's called hiring additional staff, charging more fees. Like, it's a pretty simple roadmap, but people are stuck in it.
Somebody needs to be there to give people the confidence to go out on their own. You've done it fairly recently too, and you have proof that it can work. And so if you could provide a platform or a service, teach them the confidence to go out on their own, and that there's nobody there to hold their hand to do that. So if you could be that arm that reaches out and grabs them and pulls them out, that's sounds like a valuable.
I was watching a show and somebody called a therapist a mindset architect, I think.
Ooh.
So I was like, oh, you know, like, an accounting architect, that sounds pretty cool. To build up your practice, your mindset. I actually did create another company, like, already in anticipation of, like, the next step, you know. Like I said, with my own company, I had created that way beforehand too. So I have things kind of ready, but something that has resources available, coaching, like you said, mindset work, giving people the confidence to know that there's an unlimited amount of clients out there. Like, we're not in competition with each other. We can support one another. And really, when we are supporting one another and we're changing our practices together, it makes it better for the clients. It makes it better for everybody, because someone's not coming to me and like being like, oh, you're not going to charge $150 for a tax return. Like, let's change the industry as a whole so that the public.
It's just like the market out there. There's still really cheap tax preparation. And then we're always going to, in a way, have to compete with Intuit TurboTax. And that's the playoff commercials. You see in TurboTax is sponsoring the playoffs pretty much. So you gave a big sigh.
Well, I just feel like, don't even get me started on Intuit. I feel like I'm a slave to Intuit because of QuickBooks. QuickBooks Online. Right. I mean, I use Lacerte. So the biggest... I wouldn't even look at TurboTax as a competitor for me because, again, I'm not, in that space of doing 1040s and especially simple 1040s that people could do on TurboTax. But it's just like they have such a stronghold over the market. And,
in the U.S.,
everybody doesn't want to use QuickBooks, hates how they're changing things, but feels it's necessary to use QuickBooks because all the clients are using it. So I have a very love-hate relationship with Intuit. I don't know if there's any love, but
some people have love for Intuit, but I'm not sure where it comes from. I went to their conference this year. It's a platform that is the most widely used in our country when it comes to small business books. Everybody's using QuickBooks. I think there's always going to be Intuit in our lives, and I think we have to coexist.
It's a necessary
peacefully.
evil.
Yeah, but Kelly, of these 20 episodes that you've recorded with Bilal, some takeaways that you've had or some advice you can give to our students too?
So,
just kind of sum up your journey so far.
Really, like you said before, I don't know it all. I am learning from all of our guests, which is why I love connecting with other CPAs. I, know that people are out there doing a million times better than I am, and I'm totally fine with that. I do my own thing, but then if I can share things with people, great. But to be able to hear from other people, whether it be on culture or how they scaled their own business. We just had one of my friends on who refers me a lot of business. She's a CPA. She started her firm maybe 6 years ago. I could not believe the way she said she scaled her firm. I learned so much from our podcast. Like, we're not only having firm owners on, but we're having like specialists within the industry that bring so much value on different things that you can do within your practice. It's kind of like, where are we going with it? It's like a little bit of everything, but I kind of love that. It's a little bit of everything for the listeners. We also just recorded another episode about being a woman in accounting and how different that is for people. So, in this male-dominated field. So it's been really, really beneficial.
Yeah. Well, you've been 2022 top 50 women in business in Long Island and top 50 women in accounting through Ignition. That's dope.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate what an honor it is to be asked to be on Accounting High.
I can just provide some form of guidance. We're all learning from each other, too. So, I've only been on the escalator a little bit longer. Blake, on the other hand, has been there much longer than I have. So I'm looking to him for guidance and for everything I'm doing. You're looking to Katie. She's been doing this for a while. We're all kind of learning from each other. Appreciate you, Kelly. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks again.
Class dismissed.
Okay.